This is the Recovery Lab.
Here we dive deep into the struggles, victories, and hope that stem from recovery.
No shame, no judgment, just truth, grace, and inspiration.
Let's walk this road together.
Hey guys, welcome back to Recovery Lab. This is episode 136. We have been hitting the pavement hard in 2026 with some really good guests. I'm Brynn Knox. Who else I got?
I'm David Sugg.
And I'm Daniel Anderson.
And who do we got today, David?
Yeah, Kirk. We're still glad you came in to see us today, man. I get to know a lot of folks that you have helped. I mean, I've heard your story a bunch of times, but kind of the cooler thing is to get to meet your legacy. You know, there's a story that surrounds you that you might not even know of the lives you've changed and the things that you've done. And that's how this thing works. So I'm super glad to have you. I haven't got a whole lot of chances to get to know you or to talk to you, but I know a lot of your work. And so I'm really just excited to hear it from the host's mouth. Hear it from the guy who did it. So yeah, thanks for coming in and hanging out in our studio with us.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah.
All right. Well, let's tell your story. I want to tell your story. Should we start in Texas?
No, let's start in Mississippi first.
Okay. All right.
Yeah, we moved to Mississippi in 1963. I was 4 years old, and it was the heat of the civil rights movement at that time. And we came here from, like I said, Southwest Missouri, and it was a whole different deal. I'm the fourth of five kids that my mom and dad had, and then I have a half brother from my dad's second marriage. But I still always felt like I was the middle child, you know. And first of all, too, I want to say thank y'all for having me. I'm blessed and grateful. I got my blessed shirt on today, but I'm humbled by this experience too. You know, it's Tom K's always told me that if you're ever asked to share your story, you can't say no. So you never say no. You never say no. And you grab it by the horns and you go do the deal. But you know, being the fourth kid, I was always the clown. I was the fixture. You know, I empathized with you Friday night when you told your story because I felt the way you did a lot as a child. I always felt like I didn't fit in. It was almost like life was surreal. It was like I was watching a movie, and I wasn't a part of the cast. I was just watching it all the time.
Oh, that's a good way to explain it.
You know, I'm a turkey baby. I was born in November 24th, you know, and from the time I can remember my dad talking about it, yeah, you ruined my Thanksgiving for me. I had to go eat on the square in Carthage, Missouri, because you were born on Thanksgiving. I'm like, okay, Dad. You know, my dad was an alcoholic. My mom was a rageaholic. And probably at the age of 6, it was, you know, until about 6, life was what it was. We were a family. The dynamics of thinking about what my parents did. They had kids early. There were 5 of us in the 60s. We moved to Mississippi, you know. We were called Yankees coming from Southwest Missouri. And I'm like, what are you talking about, you know? But at 6 years old, I mimicked my dad. I looked for pictures today. I've got a picture before we left Missouri. I'm sitting there with my dad. He's got a tall boy and a cigarette, and I've got a tall boy and a cigarette. And we're both sitting there on the picnic bench. I emulated everything he did.
Did you find the picture?
No, I didn't find it. I brought some oil field stuff I shared with the guys earlier when I got here. But, you know, he was my hero. He was my dad. And at 6 years old, it was going in for a hug and a kiss to say goodnight one night. And he put his hand in my chest coming in. He goes, "You're 6 years old now. We don't do that anymore." And I'm like, what did I do? He's like, "We shake hands." I'm like, okie dokie. Good night, Pops, you know. And so later on, we're watching this movie, and I'm pretty sure it's called Divorce American Style, 63, well, 60, whatever, 65. Doris Day, Dick Van Dyke, about divorce. 2 boys, yada, yada, yada. My brother that's 4 years older than me, Brad, said, our family's going to end up like that.
Wow.
And at 6 years old, I looked at him and said, bullshit. You know, excuse me, Daniel. But anyway,
Good, bro.
so
Wait, why did he think that?
because he's already seen the dynamics that I don't see between my mom and dad. I'm not paying attention to the fights that are going on. I'm oblivious to it. I'm going to bed earlier than they do. But Dad's building this really cool playhouse in the backyard. I was always the beer getter. I mean, I'd go. I mean, you know, before there were pool tops, it was pop the top and give him a good breather. He'd always give me a good breather, and I'd drink those suds running back to him. You know, so I always liked that taste. From the time I can remember, being able to open the refrigerator door, getting him beers, and so I run to get him a beer. And I said, I'm going to make him find me today. So I hid. Hiding in this little shop deal came off the back of the house. Well, he doesn't even see me there. He goes into the house, and I hear them start fighting. Mm-hmm. And then he comes running out the door, and right behind him coming out the door comes a saucer and a coffee cup. Crash, crash. And I went, holy crap. So I started paying attention to the dynamics of what was going on. We left there. Dad's career got better. We went to North Jackson. We lived on Plantation Boulevard. We 2-story house, built us a swimming pool. His thing was, we're at a friend's house. Y'all, he's drinking with his buddies from Vickers. He's like, y'all all learn how to swim today, and I'm going to build y'all a pool. So we all learned how to swim, but still watching the dynamics of what was going on between mom and dad, and it wasn't getting any better. Then the day started when he'd be walking out the door with a suitcase, and he didn't travel for work. Mom was kicking him out of the house. Mm-hmm. Then he'd come back again. All right, I'll never leave again. And then boom, 2 months later, he's back out the door. Well, his alcoholism continued to get worse. Her rage continued to get worse. He loses his job, so we go from the nice house in North Jackson to a cracker box house in Clinton, 11 from a 4-bedroom, 2-bath house to a 3-bedroom, 1-bath house in Clinton. And the fights kept getting worse. And so they got physical. They were very abusive. My mom was usually the one who started it physically, and Dad wouldn't hold back. But I learned at an early age if I went in there and threw up, they'd stop fighting. So I could throw up on demand. And then that quit working. And then at 12 years old, I remember Mom, we were going to downtown a lot. She's keeping me and my little sister Carla in the car for multiple hours, just sitting in the car. And she came out and said, we're leaving town tomorrow. We're going to your grandma's in St. Louis. I'm divorcing your dad. And I went, yes. I was like, yes. And then the other part of me went, oh, no, what's going to happen? What's going to happen? And so the divorce goes down. Mom got legal custody of me. We leave Clinton to go to a townhouse near the zoo, which I was like, man, it was already turning into the DMZ in the early 70s. And I'm like, I'm not down with this. And I'm like, I'm going to go live with Dad. So go to live with Dad. And same old stuff, Dad don't know when Dad's going to get home. He gets home. It's, hey, Kate. He called me KT. Kirk Thomas is my name, Hartley. And he'd come home. Hey, KT, go to sleep. And then I could go to sleep because I always worried about it. I was always worried about it. I was the codependent, the Al-Anon, whatever you want to call me, always worrying about my dad. Thought I was taking care of him, but I wasn't doing anything. But, I love the similarities in our stories because at 13, I'm sneaking it. We're living in Clinton. I'm sneaking into the gym at MC, jumping on the trampoline till all hours of the night because I never knew when Pops was going to get home. So I'd go jump on the trampoline to deal with my anxiety and whatnot. And a college kid came in one night and he's like, how'd you get in here? I said, can't give up my secrets, man. I said, you going to tell on me? He's like, no. And then without missing a beat, he goes, do you know Christ? I said, no, I do not. That's not talked about in our home. Never had been, As a kid, before all that, going to church was like punishment.
Yeah.
Clean socks, no socks with holes on them, wear a belt. I'm going to inspect you, bop, bop, bop. My dad didn't say this earlier, but he was a Korean War vet, forward observer, terrible job in the Army, probably suffered from post-traumatic stress syndrome, Bronze Star recipient. You know, he was a warrior for our country and our freedoms, you know, and that haunted him as well. But so, you know, this kid asked me, do you know Christ? I'm like, no, I do not. And he walked me through the steps, and I accepted Christ. I'm like, cool, I got God now, you know, and ride my bicycle back home, and, you know, midnight, no dad, 1 o'clock, no dad, 2 in the morning, here he comes, stumbling, bumbling in. I'm like, that didn't work, you know, and that was my conception of it, because I had, you know, I just get told by this guy that, you know, you give your life to Christ and bam, everything's going to be great. And I'm like, it ain't great, you know? And so
Nothing changed.
nothing changed. We go on. Dad and I moved to Tupelo. He gets a great job up there. We lived in an apartment complex. Not long after I got up there, I started working. I went to work at Cy Thompson's Beef House. I was the dishwasher at Cy Thompson's Beef House. It was right next to the townhome motel that we lived in for 3 months, because the company my dad worked for was paying for it. And they finally said, Lord, you've got to get a place, you know. But so I went to work. And,
How old were you?
13.
Okay.
1974, I believe it was. Started paying taxes. And so my dad was the kind of drunk that if he didn't have money, he was going to get money one way or the other. He was a gambler also. I didn't know that till later on in life. But so I get my first paycheck from Cy Thompson's Beef House, $69. I'm like, Dad, I need to go to the bank. I'm going to open me up a savings account and a checking account. I'm going to be a responsible member of society. He goes, how much did you get paid? I said, $69. I think it was, yeah, 69 and some change. He reaches over and he goes, hey, I'm going to need that until I get paid in a couple of weeks. And I'm like, dude, really? You know, on the inside, because if you said, oh, nay, it was, he as he gingerly liked to call it, I will box your ears. He'd beat the hell out of you, basically, is what it was. Or he'd make you remember that he beat you. You know? One of his fun games growing up was, as a child, from 6, 7 on, you know, get you pinned down, put his knee in your chest and his hand on your face and go, your ass is mine. I'm like, yeah, dude, I'm 8 years old, of course, you know,
Yeah.
you know, but he always kept that fear in you. That fear was always there. You don't cross this man. You don't cross this man. And so we're living in an apartment complex. I quit working at the restaurant. I go to work for the Bank of Mississippi. I was the change roller for the Bank of Mississippi. I counted all the coins for the bank. A buddy of mine, Dennis Buse, got me that job. He didn't want to do it anymore. So I go to work in the bank, and all the management trainee guys that worked in the bank lived in the apartment, Kirkwood Apartments, where we lived. Well, they were all management trainee guys, young 20, you know, early 20s and whatnot. So every Thursday night they were tapping a keg somewhere, and they were cooking out. Come on over, Kirk. Come on over. And that's when I first started sipping on a little beer. You know, still that same thought, man, this tastes just like it did when I used to get Dad's beers and all that stuff. And, you know, never really got intoxicated, but I got a little bit of a buzz, and I like that. You know, I can remember, you know, still, so we leave Clinton in the 8th grade, go to Tupelo in the 8th grade. I've still felt like the outsider, never fit in, didn't know these guys. Everybody that I knew, they all grew up together in Tupelo. So I was always the guy on the outside. Me and a guy named Mike Graham had the same nickname. We were called Stump because we were both about 5'2" and weighed about 165, so we looked like a walking stump. You know? But that was my claim to fame, so I did fit in a little bit. And so the hangout in Tupelo was City Park, you know, and you learned early on before, you know, you either catch a ride with somebody, and that's where all the drinking went on and whatnot. But it was, you know, typical high school stuff, you know, and then the dances and all that came up, and we partied hard then, but never an issue, never like, I got to do this. It didn't happen for me until I left to go to Mississippi State in 1977. Having a November 24th birthday, my mom made the school system let me start school at 5 years old, you know, and so I was always the youngest guy in the class. So I go off to Mississippi State. I'm 17 years old, and I am free. You know, my dad, you know, he helped me he co-signed on my car. my 1968 Bonneville I told you about earlier, $875, man. And I paid for it clean and free. And my dad's like, KT, I don't think you need your car down there your freshman year. And I was like, okay. And I left this out a while ago. One of his selling points to get me to come live with him back when I decided not to live with my mom was we had land outside Clinton that was always an escape for us to go to. But, we're going to have horses out there, and I'll get you a motorcycle, and I'm going to pay for you to go to college wherever you want to go to college if you come live with me, and blah, blah, blah. So college never got brought up until I told him I'm going to college, and I've already got student loans lined up at the bank that I'm working at. And Dad's like, I don't think you need your car down there. And I went, well, you don't have a dog in the hunt, Pops. And I said, here's the deal. I said, I'll be 18 come tax time, and if you claim me on your taxes, it's on you if they come back, because I'm independent now. I'm getting student loans. You haven't offered to do this, another failed promise, yada, yada, yada. So anyway, go off to state. Typical.
What was his reaction to that?
He didn't like it, but he took it.
Uh-huh.
And there's some other story. He'd get angry. His favorite catchphrase would always be, "You're pissing me off." Like, okay, good. Let me back up a little bit. So I'm 17 then. At 16, when we still lived in the apartment complex, I did some stupid shit and I got caught with it. And he dragged me out of the bed. I pulled a towel rack out of the wall, being a goofball, turned it into the Hulk and post. Yeah. And the handrail comes out of the wall. So panicking, I'm going to get I'm in trouble. Model glue, model airplane glue to fix the deal. And Dad never came home and washed his hands when he first walked in the door. And they'd always go to, there was this place called the Gaslight Inn in Tupelo, the dinner place and live music. And he and Alice always went there. But comes home, and what's he do when he comes home? He washes his hands. I'm like, oh my God. And I've got my door locked. And I mean, it's like he's beating on the door so hard the light from the hallway's coming into my door. And I get up and unlock the door, and I'm like, yeah, what? I mean, I'm like, yeah, what? He grabs me by the head of my hair, drags me down the hall, takes me into the bathroom, and slams my head up against the wall and goes, what is that? And being the smart aleck that I was, I said, looks like a hole to me. He spun me around. I mean, he had always, it was always an open hand normally, but he hit me with his fist, knocked me back into the wall. And I kind of went, okay, is that all you got? He hit me again, knocked me into the wall. And this painting deal came off the wall, and glass shattered and broke all over my hand. I'm in my whitey tighty standing there, and I looked at him. I said, if that's all you got, bring it. I'll take it. But I could not. My oldest brother had whipped him. Mm-hmm. He got tired of him, and that was my next move. But I couldn't do it that night. And I told him to hit me again, and he kind of snapped out of it. He's like, go to bed. And then, of course, about an hour later, he's in there, man, I'm so sorry. And I'm like, F you, man. F you, F you, F you, F you. Get out of my room. F you. Go away. Leave me alone. Leave me alone. Go away. And I'm rattled. I'm like, wow, he really did that. He really did that. I wanted to kill him. Mm-hmm. We came close to killing him before my parents got divorced. My brain, I'm sorry, I'm jumping all over the place, but memories are coming back. But anyway, the next day at breakfast at 16, I told him, I said, here's the deal. If you ever put your hands on me in anger again, I will do everything I can to kill you.
Wow.
Don't you talk to me like that. I said, I just did. Do you understand what I'm saying? Don't ever touch me in anger again. And he never did. He never touched me again. And I said, and by the way, when I turn 18, I'm going to lay you on your ass. When I turn 18, I'm going to lay you on your ass for fun. And he's like, burp, 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 boom. And so run off to state, do the typical partying with the guys and all that, having a great time. I mean, those 4 years were the best years of my life, but that's where my addiction really started. But I turned 18. I did go home for Thanksgiving. And I laid Dad on his ass, and and he took it like a man, and he knew I meant it, and then I went back to school, and I never smoked pot. I was drinking, doing a lot of drinking, having a blast, and never smoked pot until my sophomore year. And with any drug almost that I did after the first time I smoked pot was, how much does this cost and how much can we get?
Mm-hmm.
I want quantity. And so, boom, I'm getting high every day, day one. I love it. I love the way it makes me feel. It gets, my inhibitions are gone. I can talk to anybody. I'm going to bed at night, loading the bong for what I call my cup of coffee in the morning, you know, and became a resident assistant in Suttle Hall, one of the largest dorms on campus at the time. And I take over the first floor, and I've got all the handicapped guys down there, guys that are paraplegics and have physical complications, and they have a very eclectic array of drugs that they have to take to keep them in them chairs and whatnot. And they would swing by and want to get high with me and whatnot. So Kenny Scott lived across the hall from me. He was a kid from Guntown, Mississippi. He fell out of he wrecked his Maverick and broke his back. Kenny would come over and, let's get high, man. I'm like, all right. So being a resident assistant, I had a private room, and I took the beds and sewed them together and had a king size bed and a really cool headboard and an aquarium and whatnot. So Kenny come over and we'd get high, and I'd put the headphones on and leave him. He'd nod out watching the fish in the aquarium and whatnot. But it was all fun, you know. But I started experimenting with Valium and then, you know, typical, went home a couple of times. And then at 19, at 19 was when I told my folks that Dad was trying to quit drinking. 19 would have made it like 79 or 80. He had gone to CDC when it was still at Baptist back in the early 70s and only stayed for about 7 days and came home and said, those people are crazy down there. You know, so he's making some really half-ass efforts to get sober, but not getting sober. And at 19, I'd worked at the plant that he was plant manager at a couple of summers, and he came home one night, and one day at lunch, I'm working nights and getting high with another guy I'm working on the assembly line with, and he's like, KT, I got to let some folks go that have been there 5-10 years, and it's going to look really bad if you're still working there. I said, no problem. You know, Dad had this attitude that I couldn't get a job or anything without his magic wand and stuff like that. And I said, I'll have a job before the day's over. Bunch of my buds were working construction at the hospital, so that was just another avenue to have fun and get high with my buds, you know, my Tupelo guys. And so Benji turned 21. Benji Ross, guy graduated. He turned 21, and we went out and closed Lindbergh's down in Tupelo, and Dad's trying to quit drinking, and I roll in about 2 a.m. after we wrecked the Waffle House, and
as one does.
I'm rolling in, and he's sitting in the driveway in a lawn chair, and I roll up, and he's like, where have you been? I said, celebrating Benji's 21st birthday, having a good time. Well, you can't do that. I said, well, I did. You know, you're pissing me off. I said, well, maybe you're pissing me off. He snapped that folding chair, and I thought he's like, get your ass in there and go to bed. I'm like, yes, sir. So I knew then my little brother had been born. He was a couple of years old. And so I knew then it was time for me to go. I told them then, I said, hey, when I leave to state, I appreciate it. Y'all got Jeff now. Dad, I hope you get it together.
Is that why he was trying to control his drinking a little bit more?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. He was making an effort. You know, he was making an effort because my stepmom was like, Katie, bar the door. Game's over. You need to get it together.
Mm-hmm.
And her thing with me, I mean, I'd come home, I'd drink a couple of tall boys after I got off work and throw the cans in the garbage can. And one day she said, look, that's a trigger for your daddy. I'm like, I can respect that. I can respect that. I mean, this is the lady who found my bag of dope on the toilet I left in there while rolling up joints one day. And she goes, I found your happy weed. I said, oh, crap. She goes, I won't tell your daddy. I said, thank you, you know. So anyway, I go to work offshore the summer of 1980, and that's kind of when I got the oil field into my bloodstream. I work with some guys I met at the I think it was Waterworks in Columbus. I met these guys, and I was kind of the worm hand on this workover crew, but I got the oil field in my system, and I got to get on a drilling rig about the last 3 weeks that I worked for Livingston Oil Well Service, and I'm like, I like this. I can do this. Oh, my God, I like this. And so I go back to state. I was majoring in banking and finance, of all things, because I worked for a bank. I worked for the Bank of Mississippi in Tupelo, and they'd promised me a job. Go to school. You got a job. They were the ones doing my student loans and whatnot. So
And you can roll some coins.
I can roll some coins. I worked in every department that they had. My thing, we won't even go there. But they were taking care of me. They were being good to me. They, I knew I had a job doing that, but I get a taste of the oil field. My oldest brother had a petroleum engineering degree. He'd never even seen a drilling rig. He was working for Exxon down in Jay, Florida. And so he gets interviewed by a guy at a bank in Fort Worth, Continental National Bank. They needed a petroleum engineer on their staff to do these energy loans, and he ends up going to work there. Well, I'm back at school, and he goes, hey, I can get you a job for the summer if you want to go work in Abilene. I'm like, cool. So I go to work in West Texas in Abilene. In an armpit of the world. It's like everything's flat, no tree. Well, there were trees in certain areas of the town, the old part of town, but it's just like flat, wind blew all the time. But anyway, so I get out there. I'm working for this. The name of this company was High Hopes Drilling Company. And it was a piece of junk. I mean, it was really just a not your standard drilling rig. And we kept that thing together with baling wire, electric tape, and spit. I mean, you had to learn how to repair stuff on the fly. And my 6th or 7th day on that rig, we're working out of Bastrop, actually outside Austin, Texas. And my driller at that time, I can see him in my mind. I can't remember what his name was, but he was about 6'4", big old, just a brute, big old red beard and a handlebar mustache, and had a stainless steel hard hat with a Marine Corps insignia on it. And he fired the guy, Fred, of all things, a guy named Fred working derricks. He goes, that guy doesn't have a job anymore. He goes, can you work derricks? I said, man, I can work anything you got. He goes, all right, go get your safety harness on. And before I got ready to climb up the derrick, he said, look, you're probably going to need these because you're going to be up there all night. And he gave me 2 hits of speed. Now, I'd already done some speed, but these were the Christmas trees that had, anyway. Took a couple of those, and I'm on the monkey board all night working, and I'm looking down there at him going, I want his job. I want to do that. I want to do that. And I stayed in that position for a while, and then they offered me a drilling job. And then on one day, I pissed my tool pusher off, Jeff, pissed him off really bad. He fired me, threatened to whoop my butt, took a swing at me, and I put my foot in his chest and just laughed at me. And then the owner of the company said, hey, Jeff wants to apologize to you. You've still got a job. And so, and that was, phone call came after I'd already drank a bottle of mezcal and ate the worm, and I'm feeling pretty good. So I drive across town for Jeff to apologize to me, and he didn't want to come out the back door. He goes, I'll talk to you through the fence. He goes, if you can be there in the morning, you've still got your job. And I'm like, you know what? We're good. Because if you did come out the door, I probably would whip your butt right now. I said, funny, fired, rehired, and I quit. Have a good day. Boom. And I already had another job lined up, working. I went to work for some Italians. They were the Giannetti family, the Genco Oil and Gas. And my addiction's getting a little more progressive. In that time period, yeah, that was a picture I meant to bring today, too. The first guy that ever stuck a needle in my arm, Perry J. from Meridian, Mississippi. He came out, and I worked him for a summer. And it was that same day I quit my job at High Hopes Drilling Company. And I hadn't seen a whole lot of blacks in Abilene. Seen a lot of Mexicans, but not a whole lot of blacks. And we live in this old antebellum home, and they had apartments in it on Sales Boulevard. And I hear this knock on the door, and I open the door, and there's this little bitty short black guy there. And I'm like, who are you? He said, my name's Early. I said, well, you're late, I said, what do you want? He goes, and Perry's going, let him in, let him in, let him in. I'm like, all right, come on in. And another guy, Bobby from Meridian, Bobby and I went to state together, and I got him a job out there. He was working with me as well and whatnot. And he told me about Perry being an IV drug user. I'm like, not in my house. That ain't happening here. And so I've killed the mescal. I've eaten the worm. I've quit my job. Early shows up. He's got Preludes. Good old Preludes were synthetic speed that the larger women got from the doctors. It was a prescription pill, but it was basically methamphetamines. And you could cook them down, and it was a pretty good bump. And so anyway, I'm loaded enough that Perry goes, "Hey, look, I know you don't want me to do this, but watch what I do." I'm like, "All right." And so I watched what he did, and I went, "Here you go," And like I said earlier, I looked at him, and I said, "How much do these things cost, and how many can we get?" And that was the beginning of my love affair with IV drug use. And
it changes everything.
It went from my life I always felt like my life was going at about 75, 80 miles an hour, doing what I did, working in the oil field. I talked about this in a meeting yesterday, that my theme song, my national anthem theme song was Highway to Hell, No stop lines, no stop signs, no speed limits, nobody going to slow me down. And that just went from 80 to 160.
Mm-hmm.
And, oh, my God.
Yeah.
Oh, my God, what have I done? It's on.
Yeah.
And so my mindset at the time was always, well, if I don't do it, if I don't fix myself, I'm not that bad. I always had somebody bumping me off.
Mm-hmm.
And then I got angry at this guy one night because he's too wired for sound and he can't hit me. And he's like, "F you, do it yourself." Well, that was another mistake. That for me, that changed the game again.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm locked and loaded. Boom, game on. And my life's insane. I got married during this time. I did a 3-pill shot 30 minutes before I got married. I'm getting married by some little bitty short justice of the peace. I'm more focused on the sweat going down my nose. He's sitting there, y'all. He's sitting there. I showed you Tony Tersini, my Italian star, and he's in a tuxedo, too small for him and all that. It's just a clown show. And I've got this little justice of the peace sitting in front of me telling me what I'm supposed to say, and I'm watching this piece of sweat trickle down my nose. And the girl I'm marrying is, oh, God, it's just a basket case. And he's like, "Son, are you here?" I'm like, "Excuse me?" So we get married. We boogie off to San Antonio and get down there, and I slept for a day and a half. She'd wake me up. "What is wrong with you?" I'm like, "I'm just really tired." And then from that point on, all I did, we were at that Hilton that's on the Riverwalk. If you ever go to San Antonio, I'm at the bar just slamming them the rest of the time. It's just like I am out of control, And about a month after I got married to Kathy, my first wife, she's like, "Honey, I'd like to have an open marriage." And I'm like, So I'm working what they called evening tower shift. That's 3 to 11. And so I'm like, "Okay, what's your idea of an open marriage?" "Well, you do your thing, I'll do my thing, and, we'll hook up every once in a while. And, I'm like, and on the inside, I'm about to explode. And she said something, I can't remember it, and then I said something back, and then she slapped me, and knee-jerk reaction, I slapped her back. I'm not proud to say that because I had made a vow that I couldn't keep as a child watching my dad beat my mother up. It hurt my heart, but it was almost spontaneous that she hit me. I popped her and went, "Oh, my God, what did I do?" And she came at me again, and I'm like, "No, we're not going to do this." And she just hitting on me and all that. I'm like, "Not going to do this." That changed the dynamic of everything. And right then I said, I need to divorce this girl. But I didn't. I stayed married to her for 2 years and 9 months too long and went through a lot of insanity with what comes with an open marriage.
It's so weird it didn't work out.
Well, there was a day and time when I had I never owned any guns because I didn't trust myself with any guns. And there was a day and time when I was so tweaked out on meth, on speed, that my hippie, I showed David and Daniel, my hippie guy, my lead tong hand on the floor. He had a long barreled 357. I was going to kill this guy. She was screwing. I was going to kill her, and then I was going to kill myself. That would solve everything. And at that time, I didn't know God was taking care of me then, because I couldn't go through with it. I wanted to go through with it, but I couldn't go through with it. In 1985, January of 85, I came home from work. We had separated and got back together. Her daddy begged me not to divorce her daughter. He was a old missionary, Baptist church missionary, had been a missionary in Haiti and all this. And now he was a financial planner in Denver, Colorado. And it would just be a stain on the family. Don't divorce my daughter. I'll buy y'all a house, and here you can have this Volvo. And, you know, I was getting gifted with all this stuff. And I'm like, well, it sounds like a pretty good deal. So we get this little cookie cutter house, and came in from work one night, and I could tell by the way the light was shining through the curtains that something was different. You know, I don't know what it was, but I was loaded to the gills and walk in the door, and the TV sitting on the ottoman, and one chair out of the living room furniture sitting there, and there's a note on the TV that said, "Kirk, I've moved a few things out of the house today. I'm still here. My daddy will pick me up in the morning. Please don't bother talking to me because we have nothing to talk about." Well, we had a little talking today. And so I kicked the bedroom door down. She made a beeline for the bathroom and locked that door. I kicked that door down. You know, I was watching Full Contact Karate on ESPN at the time. It was that. So I'm doing some Brad Hefflin karate kicks, man. I mean, you know. And so she starts throwing bottles and stuff at me. One shatters over this eye. I get cut right here. She scratches my face. I chunk her across the room, and she didn't make any noise for a minute. And I went, "Oh God, I hope I didn't kill her," you know. And she got up, and I said, "You need to go. You need to go." And so she called the cops. Cops show up. We're all good here. I'm like, "Look at me, dude. You know, what? You know, we're good. She's leaving. We're good." And so when she walked out the front door, she looked at me and she said, "I never want to hear the least inkling of an echo of your voice ever again." It's the last thing she ever said to me. And she never has heard my voice again. That was an amend that was hard to make later on in recovery. But so what do? I met her in a bar. So what do? I go to Graham Central Station and meet my next victim, you know. She's married. She's legally separated and still married with 2 children. So, and they end up moving in. But she was probably the impetus for me ending up getting into treatment. My next door neighbor ended up being my connect for crystal meth. He was a bandito biker guy that was kind of wasn't an active rider anymore. He still had his bike. He got hurt and hit in a car wreck real bad. He was a computer programmer for West Texas Utilities, was his day job, but by night he was the kingpin for West Texas. And the meth came straight from the cook in Arlington, and then got distributed from Abilene to Odessa to Lubbock. You know. And when Kathy left, she cut all the utilities off in the house, so I didn't have a phone. And I'm going over and using Mike's phone all the time. I'm like, "Hey, dude, I need to get my utilities turned back on, yada, yada, yada." I go over one day and said, wrote a big old fatty up. And I'm like, "Let's see if this guy gets high." You know, so I go over. I'm like, "Hey, Mike, you like to get high?" He's like, "Of course." So we smoke a fatty, and we're sitting there drinking a beer. And he goes, "You don't know any guys that like to do any crystal meth, do you?" And I was like, "Hello." And so, just deeper and deeper and deeper. And I mean, you know, it tickles me because I never watched Breaking Bad till about 6 months ago. And, you know, I'm like, that was my life. I'm one of them tweakers, But, oh, my God, straight from the cook, not walked on, just pure. And it was terrible, I mean, I would do bumps and look down and my chest would be vibrating, and I'm going, oh, God, oh, God. That was my only time I ever said anything to God. Oh, God, oh, God. And so August of 85, I am hallucinating from doing too much meth now, not sleeping any. Had a sentinel of it out on the drilling rig. I'd never experienced a blowout, and we had a blowout. And that's where you hit a pocket of gas or you hit a real hard, high-pressured pocket of oil. We hit gas. It basically empties your hull of all your drilling fluids, and gas starts coming up out of the ground. It's very dangerous. It could have exploded and killed everybody. My crew takes off running down the road because we're all tweaked. We were high all the time. And my justification back then was, well, I don't drink before I go to work. We worked 3 to 11 every day. When the sun went down, my tool pusher would call on the radio, you boys had your safety meeting today? Today? Yes, sir. We have one at sundown every night. Well, we'd smoke a joint every night and talk about safety. We were high all the time. That was just what went with it, 10 foot tall and bulletproof and oil field trash, and damn proud of it, and if one of us got in trouble, we all got in trouble. I mean, fights, stupid stuff, terrible, just terrible behavior. And, I'm hallucinating now after this blowout. My knees are knocking. We get all that done, and my tool pusher's going, man, you did a great job. You did a great job. But on the inside, I'm going, oh, my God, I could have died today. And so probably 3 days after that, I'm at home. I'm wired for sound. I'm trying to come down. I eat a bunch of Valium. That didn't work. I'm hallucinating. I hear a noise. I'm watching Full Contact Karate on ESPN at 2:30 in the morning, and I hear a noise in my backyard, and I open the back door, and I look up, and literally, y'all, I see a guy on a house behind me with, I called it an elephant gun at the time, and he's looking at me with his binoculars, and he goes, yeah, he just walked out the back door. I can take him out now if you want to. I don't know if and this is as real as it is. And I didn't own a gun, but I had an old World War II bayonet that I still have today. I go inside, get my World War II bayonet, and I walk out in the backyard, and I'm like, bring it on, MFR, And so, this is comical to tell it. I really did it. So I get up on my house. I climb up on the fence, pop up on my house, and I'm like, this guy has not disappeared. I'm like, bring it on, dude. I'm ready. And I hear another noise. I look down the street, and there's a full platoon of SWAT guys coming down the street. I'm like, what did I do? And I fell off the house with a bayonet in my hand. I got back up on the house. Y'all, and then the next thing I remember, I am riding full saddle, cross-legged on the top of the swing set that I had for the kids, holding on to the jungle gym thing, that bayonet on my lap. The sun's coming up, and Mona walks out the back door and goes, what are you doing? I was like, get back in the house. They'll take you too. And next thing I know, I'm laying on the slide, and she's pouring a pitcher of water on me, saying, we need to talk. I said, okay. We go into the house. I grab the gallon jug of Evan Williams that I had up there, pour me a stiff one, get ready to drink it. She knocks it out of my hand. She takes my gallon, puts it in the sink, and I'm just sitting there watching that thing go bloop, bloop, watching that brown liquor just disappear. So I grab my truck keys. She's like, what are you doing? I said, I'm going to run down to the store and get a six-pack. I'm like, I need a drink. She goes, nope, no more. And she goes, you need help. I said, I think you're right. So we go to Hendrick Medical Center. That's where the care unit was. It was called the care unit. They had facilities all over Texas. It was hospital-based treatment centers. And so go up there. interview. Yeah, you're a likely candidate. Go down to the finance department. Well, your insurance isn't going to pay. And I'm like, well, if insurance isn't going to pay, I don't guess I'm going to come to treatment. And then he goes, he said something to the effect, I called him a little pencil neck geek, little accountant looking dude, you know, with his little tie and all that. And he goes, well, I guess you're not going to be able to come to treatment then. And I said, there's got to be a way we can work this stuff out. And he's like, no, sir, I don't think so. So being the cocky, arrogant, egotistical guy that I was, I stood up, I put my hands on his desk. I said, well, okay, I hope my desk stays on your conscience then. And I turned to walk around. He goes, wait a minute, bud, wait a minute. Come back here. Sit down. Can you sign a promissory note? I'm like, yes, sir, I can sign anything you got, you know. This is, 1985. I think it was like $14,500 for 30 days of treatment or whatever. I signed that promissory note. And then while I was in treatment, Texas state legislature advocated that insurance had to pay for treatment. So anyway, so I'm going to get to go to treatment, and she thinks she's going to leave me there and bring me my stuff and all that. I'm like, oh, nay. I gotta talk to Jackie, my tool pusher. I got to make sure I've got a job if I'm going to go do this. And so I get Jackie to come out to the house, and Jackie was a true Texan. He was about 6'4", old country boy from eastern Texas, and he had a cock eye, so you never knew which eye was looking at you. And he talked really slow, and I was like radar with him off of MASH all the time because I'd be saying what he was saying before he could get it out. We had that kind of a relationship, and I mean, I was good at my job. I'm not bragging. I was a damn good driller. I made our company a lot of money. I was fast at what I did. I was efficient, and the other crews were as well. But we were considered the best crew on the drilling rig. And I just told him, I said, look, I've got a problem with drugs. And he goes, boy, you just got divorced. He goes, I just figured you had a bad problem with divorceitis, and I know you smoke him. He said, I know you smoke him left-handed cigarettes. I said, and I had a long sleeve T-shirt on at the time, and I pulled my sleeves up, and I said, look, I'm a junkie, man. I'm a junkie. And he kind of took a deep breath. Said, I believe his first words were GD, GD, son. And he wasn't much older than me. He said, damn it, and I said, I need help. And I need to know I've got a job if I go do this. I said, because this is all I've got right now. This is my identity. This is who I'm in. This is what I'm good at. And, and all that time, it's a wonder I didn't hurt somebody or kill somebody. Mm-hmm. We had a lot of close calls. I mean, it's a dangerous job. It's a high-risk job. But he said, I'll tell you like this. He said, I don't know if you'll have a drilling job, but you've got a job. He goes, you're a good hand. He goes, you can bank on that. Go get some help. And prior to that, about a year prior to that, before all the insanity got really bad, the company I worked for offered to send me back to school because they knew I had majored in banking and finance, and they wanted me to get my finance degree. And so I'm going to Abilene Christian University. I'm 24, 23, 24, and these kids look like, junior high kids to me, and I had hair down to here, shoulder hair. And I've got to take 6 hours of religion, and I'm taking personnel management and Old Testament, and I'm sitting out at the rig, dry watching, drinking a tall, a quart bottle of Budweiser, reading the Old Testament, and going, "This is wrong. This is wrong," And so that was, kind of the precursor steps for me going to treatment. So I go to treatment. Do my intake, a little Hispanic girl does my intake. And, one of the first questions she asked me, she's like, did you know you can get AIDS from shooting drugs, from IV drug use? I'm like, are you kidding me? I'm like, are you kidding me? And Hep C too, right? She's like, of course. I'm like, oh my God. And I said, yes, I do. And that's a fear I have already. Now you've doubled down on me. She goes, well, are you an alcoholic? I said, no, my dad's an alcoholic. I said, I'm a drug addict. I was like, I'm a drug addict. And, well, how often do you drink? I'm like, well, I get up, I take a bong hit, and I get a Budweiser out of the refrigerator after I take a bong. You might be an alcoholic. So they stick me in detox. They give me a Valium. I'm like, okay, because I'm thinking, I don't know what to think. I don't know what's going to happen. Go to sleep for a day, get up. There's a line at the nurse's station, and I'm like, that's where the drugs are, And so I go get in line, and they're handing out multivitamins and stuff like that. I'm like, crap. And so they're like, you're done. You're going to detox throughout this whole process. You're good. Go, here's your room. Go down there. I get to my room. Jerry's my roommate. He's a squirrely looking dude, and throw my bag on the ground. And he goes, hey, you see that door right there? I said, yeah. He goes, it ain't got a lock on it. I said, good. I don't know if I want to be locked up in here with you or not. He goes over to his little chest of drawers and pulls out this little piece of metal. And I called it a chingalinger. He goes over and he puts it on the door, and he goes, try to open that door. I go over there and I grab that door, and I'm like, all right, dude, what's the point? He goes, see that window over there? We're on the 6th floor. He goes, ain't supposed to be opening that window either. And he goes over and he opens up the window. I'm like, all right, dude, what's the deal? He's like, we can get high. Put a towel in front of the door, we can get high. I'm like, oh my God, That's day 2 of treatment. I'm like, what have I gotten myself into? So I ain't down with that, brother. Put that stuff up. And so I go to my first group, day 3. Virginia was my counselor. She wasn't one of us, and she was a book smart girl, one of them, trained. And so we're sitting in group, and I wanted to make an A in treatment, and she's like, "So, does anybody know what gratitude is?" Yeah, I do. She's like, "Kirk, what's your idea of what gratitude is?" I said, "Gratitude." I said, that's what you put on your check when you pay your bill at the restaurant with your credit card. And everybody cracked up laughing. And she's like, no, that's not it. Why don't you just hush and listen for a couple of days? And so I did. I listened for a couple of days. I'd nod off all the time. I'm trying to take notes, and you could tell when I'd nod off because my pen would go like that. And then I started getting these phone calls from a little girl, my little, instant wife and instant family that was living in my house while I'm gone. And she's calling me going, I don't know if I want you to be there, and you need to come home. And I'm kicking a hole in the wall of your house right now, and hear that, bang, bang, bang. You need to come home. And I'm like, no, I ain't coming home. And so
I thought she wanted you to get
She
home.
she did, but I'm already gone, and the life dynamics already changed. Yeah, it was, I'm just as confused as you are right now. So I start taking licks on the payphone and whatnot, and slamming the payphone, and the nurse sees me doing that. She's like, come here. We're going to help you deal with this anger. Put your arm out. Put my arm out. She puts a rubber band on my hand. And I feel like I'm being punished, like I'm in kindergarten again or whatever. She goes, now, when you get angry, you pop yourself with that rubber band. And I'm like, you have lost your effing mind, Pop, My vent was to go to my room and put my feet up on the air conditioning unit and do massive amounts of push-ups, just massive amounts of push-ups. And I'd pull that rubber band. I'd break that rubber band. Kirk, come get another rubber band. I'm like, God almighty. We'll put on another rubber band. And, about day 6 or so, hey, everybody needs to be in the group room at 6 o'clock. I get there 6 o'clock. I'm like, what are we doing? They're like, we're going to an AA meeting. I'm like, a what? They're like, Alcoholics Anonymous. I'm like, do what? Yeah, we're going to an AA meeting. Now, to my mind, I don't think I've ever heard those words. I've never heard those words. I don't know what that is. And so we go, and so we're in a hospital-based treatment center, so you've got a bag. You're tagged and bagged with your hospital bracelet with your name and information and all that on there. And I walk into it was open door clubhouse, kind of a miniature Yana. And I walk in, and this cat walks up to me, and he goes, hey, man, how long you been in treatment? I'm like, how do you know I'm in treatment? He goes, oh, dude, you're bagged and tagged, man. I'm like, golly. And I said, I think it's day 6. He goes, you're working on your first step. I'm like, I can walk pretty good. I don't know what you're talking about. I'm a smart ass through and through, and I have no idea what you're talking about. He goes, you'll learn about it. So the meeting gets started, hear more about alcoholism, I hear about the dynamics of what they do, and yada, yada, yada. And then they started reading how it works. And I heard the word God. And my inside voice went, oh, God, God. And then I heard God 4 or 5 more times in that how it works reading. Every time I heard that word God, I went, oh, God, because that God I understood was not good, didn't work. No. And for lack of a better word, my rebelliousness would not let me let my guard down. I was still 10 foot tall, bulletproof, Billy Badass. You couldn't tell me anything. I wasn't about to tell another man that I was scared, that I didn't know my butt from a hole in the ground, that I don't even know if I want to be sober or clean, as they said in NA, because I got introduced to NA later, which I got involved with a great deal in my recovery later on. But I let that run me out the door. I had to start my 4-step before they discharged us from treatment, And so, I go into treatment looking like Skeletor. I weighed 159 pounds, sunken jaw. And when Mr. Howard, crotchety alcoholic from Fort Worth, said, son, you can order double everything on that menu for our food. I'm like, dude, I was chowing down, man. So, they said, you've got to start your 4-step and you've got to show it to us. And I said, you're not the person I want to do my 5th step with. So why do I have to show this to you? Well, you got to show us that you started it. And that was the only thing keeping me from getting discharged that day, like day 31 or whatever. And so I go to my room. I hate my mom. I hate my dad. I hate my ex-wife. And I'm not too sure about this girl living in my house right now. So I started my 4-step. I went in there and said, here you go. And so prior to that, to get a bigger grasp on what I'd got introduced to with AA, there was a similar to the old timers roundup. It was called the West Texas Big Country Roundup of Alcoholics Anonymous. It was a very long title at the Abilene Christian Convention Center. And so we go to this thing, and they say, bring your big book. So I've got me a big book. I have not cracked it open. I have not opened that book one time. And we get there, and of all people doing a talk, it's Charlie and Joe.
Oh, no way.
And I'm like, did not know who these guys were. I was like, this is total BS, And Charlie read the promises. And I went, promises, smamishes, those will never come true for me. That was my attitude. Terrible. A prick, basically. And so I've got a little story I'll tell about that later on in my recovery time. Boom. Day 33, Virginia's there. Jackie's there. Mona's not there. Jackie's going to give me a ride home. I'm getting things of like, I liked you better drunk. I liked you better drunk. I don't know why you stayed in treatment this long, yada, yada, yada. And so Virginia, we're getting a little coin out. I'm getting my little care unit coin with the Serenity prayer on the back and all that stuff. And she looks at me and she's like, well, Kirk, you've got the tools for recovery. And my immediate reaction in my mind was, where in the hell is the toolbox? Because I was clueless. Mm-hmm. Basically, I did, I know your history partially, David, with incarceration and all that. Prior to going to treatment, I got divorced last week of February of 85. I went to treatment in August of 85. I had 16 separate run-ins with the law. Mm-hmm. And the only reason I did not go to jail could have been DUI, possession, drug paraphernalia, possession with intent. Everything. I could have got arrested every time. I talked my way out of it, and working in the oil field was my saving grace. That's just how ironic it was. And I did not know that until I came home and had to prove that I lived in Texas. But, that was my attitude. I did 33 days to wake up. I gained 15 pounds, and I'm good. I'm ready to go back to work. I'm sober. I got a sober mind. My head's clean. I'm cleared. I still don't know what these tools are you're talking about. And Virginia looks at Jackie and goes, Jackie, what if Kirk relapses, what are you going to do? And he goes, oh, he knows what I'm going to do. He'll never work in the oil field again. I'll take care of that. So now I've got that, so boom. 2 days later, I'm standing on the drilling rig, and it looks different. It sounds different. It smells different, and I am full of fear. I am full of fear, more fear than I had before I went to treatment. And I am like, can I do this sober? I mean, because it's frenetic just all the time, moving stuff. And, I'm as a driller, you're paying attention to your ideas. You've got pumps that are 50 yards away, and you hear those motors, and when you got something going on with the equipment, and you're trying to fix problems before they happen, because their deal was you make hole. You're making as much footage a day as you can, because it's punch that hole, run that case, and you move to the next hole. And so there's a lot of dynamics that go into it, and I'm just like, oh my God. And I'm going to aftercare. I'm going to maybe 1 or 2 meetings. I got promoted while I was in treatment to the daylight driller, working regular man hours is what we call that. I had to be at work at 7 o'clock in the morning. I got off at 3 o'clock in the morning. We want you to be able to make your AA meetings and do your aftercare. Pyramid Drilling Company that I work for said, how much money do you need to get back on your feet again? We've paid you while you were in treatment, but we probably know you're behind on some things. So, of course, I told them I needed a couple more grand that I really needed. I was already rat-holing money for a relapse. Did not know that, but that's what I was doing in the back of my mind already. I'm going to aftercare, going, land, life's great. Life's great. How is it, Joe? How is it for you? I was passing the buck. Man, I've got to get up at 3:30. I got to drive 160 miles to get to my rig in the morning. I got to leave. I got to be up at 3 and on the road. Never drank coffee till I got sober. I'm drinking coffee and driving to work, and got arrested in October for 2 tickets that I pay out of those 16 that cost me $463 to keep from going to jail in 1985, and that was a lot of money back then. Consequence of my behavior. And so fast forward, it's December. This girl that's living with me still telling me she liked me better drunk. And I don't have the willpower or the gumption to say leave. I like the kids, and so a kid that worked for me, Kelly, his dad was the company accountant. He called me on the rig radio that day, and he said, hey, mate, Kelly was getting ready to go back to Texas A&M in accounting for like his dad. And his dad called me and said, make sure that boy never wants to work in the oil field again. Can you take care of that? I said, yes, sir. So, we threw him in mud pits, and we wore him out, Had a lot of fun with him. He was a good guy. But we're riding home that day, December 23rd of 1985. He's sitting in the back seat. I'm not driving that day, and so I couldn't say, hey, no, y'all can't stop and get beer for the ride home. So I'm drinking a Diet Coke on the way home, and he's sitting in the back seat saying, hey, you going to drink? I'm still going to bars. I'm going to bars, drinking Diet Cokes with cherries in them, and two-stepping and going to, country here, rock and roll over here, and having a good time. And I can't let that go. And he's sitting in the back seat. He's like, he taps me back. He goes, hey, you going to drink Diet Cokes with cherries in them tonight? Or I said, yeah, probably. He goes, well, if you want to get drunk, I'm buying. And my head was like the Exorcist. I turned around, I looked at him, I said, you better bring a lot of money. You better bring a lot of money. And I knew right then I was getting loaded that night. So we hit Butterfield Junctions, live band, cocktail waitress wasn't coming around fast enough, so I'm hitting the bar. I go to the bar, get a double Crown and water. I turn, and there's a guy in the fellowship named Gary, big old dude, like 6'6", 6'4". And I turn, and he looks at me, and I look at him. I'm like, what are you doing here? He goes, I said, are you the AA police? He's like, no, boy, I don't care what you do. He goes, you know Bubba? I'm like, no, I don't know Bubba. Yeah, Bubba. You remember Bubba? You met Bubba? He's the drummer. He's the drummer in this band. He's in the program, too. And I said, salute. Good luck with that. Boom, I'm gone. we hit every bar in town, and at like 2 a.m, Danny White, Danny White was the ex-QB for Dallas Cowboys, and he had a yeehaw bar there in Abilene. I'm shooting tequila with Danny White, And I walk out of there at like 2:30 in the morning, and I'm like, man, I don't even feel drunk. But I'm drunker than Cooter Brown. But my brain's telling me I'm not drunk.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not an alcoholic. They were wrong, And y'all, within a week, my crew changed around. I had this roughneck dude from San Angelo, and he's like, "Hey, I got some Coke if you want some Coke." I'm like, cool. So I snort Coke. I do a couple of grams for a couple of days and snort it. And I said, just keep it. I'll tell you when I want it. But when I dropped him off after work, I said, "You got any rigs?" He said, "I do." I said, "Bring a couple of those." So I slammed a little Coke, did a couple of more grams of that, and was like, I can't do this anymore. I knew. I said, I cannot do IV drugs. Just that. I felt the beast wake up,
Mm-hmm.
and that was different than the alcohol that I drank. Kept drinking, kept smoking pot. I told my guys, as long as y'all bring it, we'll smoke it, but I ain't buying nothing. That was my deal. And we're going to get high at work. We're bringing it, and so pot finally quit working. So July the 5th of 1986, I load the kids up. We had a little 280Z Datsun, and I'd quit drinking in May. I won't tell that story. I probably told too much drunk-a-log anyway already, but I told that story. I go into Kevin's. We're in a trailer park. I leave the kids in the trailer park. And when I've told my story before, people go, trailer park? I'm like, yeah, it was 1986, man. It was okay. It was clean, trailer park. It was a good trailer park. Kids are in the car, go in, smoke a joint, not drinking. Got Kevin. I told my hippie, I said, roll me up a fatty. We're going to the stock car races. Smoking another joint. I'm over there changing the albums, flipping the albums over, Led Zeppelin or whatever, and I'm getting ready to pop the needle back over there, and there's a knock on the door. Little knock on the door. And I went, oh, my God, I left the kids in the car. And I showed this to the guys a minute ago. But that little guy right there, that's Christopher. He was 4 years old. He was standing at the bottom of the stoop with his hands on his waist. He looked up at me and he said, are we going to the races or what? And that moment right there was God doing for me what I could not do for myself. But at that moment, when I looked at him and he said that, I get goosebumps every time I tell this, because this is God. God said, Kirk, you don't have to live this way anymore. And I immediately lost my buzz. And I was like, where did that come from? So I opened the door to the trailer, threw the joint to Kevin, and said, I don't think I'm going to need this. And we drove out of that trailer park. Every speed bump that we went over, we'd go over the speed bump, and I'd cry a little bit. I'm shook up. And little Chastity, little freckled face, cutest little girl, freckled face, blue eyes, had to wear glasses. She's looking at me going, Mr. Kirk. She called me Mr. Kirk. Mr. Kirk, are you okay? I said, I am, and I'm going to be okay. And we went to the races, and we had a good time. And the next day, July the 6th of 1986, I was at Open Door at my first AA meeting to pick up a silver chip. And I walk in with my hat pulled over my eyes, head down, saw the room, took in the room, one chair left in the circle. I go sit down. I pull my hat up. I look to my left, and guess who's sitting there? Old Gary from Butterfield Junctions telling me, good luck with that. And I said, dude, are you kidding me? His first words to me was, I knew you'd be back. And I said, well, you know something I don't know. And I'm going to tell you straight up right now, I do not get this God thing. This God thing scares me to death. And probably since I was a kid, that was the first time I told another man that I was scared.
Mm-hmm.
He said, boy, look around the room. What do you see? You've heard this, I think, before. I said, a bunch of damn alcoholics. He said, nope. Group of drunks. G-O-D. Can you wrap your head around that? I said, I think I can. He said, you need to keep it really, really, really simple, boy. He called me boy a lot, and I respected him for that because I was a boy. I was a little kid in the candy store that did not know what to take next.
Mm-hmm.
But the bottom line was that I knew in my heart that I didn't want to live that way. You know, no matter what, I wasn't going to give up. And that was different. That was different than walking into that treatment center, not knowing anything, not knowing what AA was, not knowing what NA was. And I was involved in NA too because I needed that connection because back then I go to my next meeting at Grape Street Group. It was a little clubhouse right across the street from Hendrick Medical Center where I went to treatment. And there were some crotchety old farts in there. There weren't any women, all crotchety old men. Oh, Mr. Ralph, he had suspenders, and his pants were almost up to his chest. He had these old wireframe glasses, pack of Camels in his pocket protector. He walked up, put his hands on his hips, and I was 25. I was the youngest guy in there. He said, boy, I probably spilled more than you ever drank. I said, you probably did. I said, I didn't spill too much. I said, but I drank a lot. I said, but how much dope did you shoot? We don't talk about that in here. I said, yes, sir, I know that. I won't bring it up again. I respected that.
Mm.
But I had to go talk about it somewhere, and I did that in NA. You know, so 2 weeks in, so here's the irony in it. So I'm sober now. She's not going to let me use the car to go to meeting. So I'm riding my 10-speed. I'm riding my 10-speed to meetings. And the closest meeting to my house was Grape Street by the hospital, about 6 miles away. And I had to go through that part of town where I used to cop Preludes at. And y'all, believe it or not, those folks still knew who I was. So, hey, Kirk, we got what you need. I'm like, I don't think so. Motoring on, baby. And, you know, and I'm doing my job. And in 1986, the oil field was kind of getting upside down. It was a real tough time. A lot of companies were going under. And Pyramid Drilling Company, they had 7 rigs. It was family-owned business. They all but guaranteed me a job. You've got a job. You got a job. I talked to, by that time, Jackie had become the drilling superintendent over all the rigs and kind of like the landman guy on TV that you see today, like Billy Bob plays. And so I talked to Jackie before I talked to Billy, my tool pusher, who I'd been relieving for years. And he and I always butted heads because I lied to him all the time. I mean, I was the guy that would show up to work with a flat tire in my trunk all the time and a speeding ticket in my hand. Late for work, got another ticket, and they're like, screw you, that's the same ticket you had yesterday. It's the same tire. You're right. I'm sorry. Anyway, so I said, dude, I just need to go home, get at least a month under my belt, or at least 2 weeks. I need to get away. I just need to breathe. I need to get away from the insanity. I need to get away from her. Help me get a place to live. You know, just let me get away and rest a little bit. And, I mean, I was not only physically, spiritually, but financially bankrupt, you know, all three. I mean, I had enough money to buy a one-way ticket, which was like $79 to Jackson, Mississippi on the Greyhound. I had like $85 to my name. I had $5 in my pocket when I got off the bus, July the 20th, 1986. I've been sober for 2 weeks. My stepdad picked me up at the old Greyhound station. And on the way home, I said, Jason, I don't know how you and Mom feel about this, but I need a car to be able to make meetings. He goes, you and your mama, we'll talk about that when we get home. And so get home, and I'm like, I need a car. I had already grabbed the phone book. I found out where the next NA meeting was and had every, you know, I'm going. If I have to hitchhike, I'm going, you know. And that was a crazy ride home. But before I left Abilene, the day I quit my job and was like, oh, my God, what did I do? I just quit my job. I called Steve, who was on the top of the list in my NA basic text. I said, dude, I just quit my job. He goes, okay. You feel like getting loaded? I said, no. He goes, okay, good. What are you going to do? I said, I'm fixing to get on a bus and go to Mississippi. He goes, well, good. Get on the bus and go to Mississippi. He said, you got your basic text? He says, I do. He says, you got your big book? Because he was a dual guy too. A lot of folks did both, It wasn't frowned upon back then, kind of. It's weird. It was just weird, He goes, hey, read page 63 every day. Read that third step prayer every day until you can memorize it. Whether you mean it or not. Say it until you mean it. And say it. Read it. Read page 86 through 88 every day. Read it. Read page 449, as it used to be, not 417. Read acceptance every day. Read it until you can read along with it. Make that party. He goes, whether you realize it or not, you're laying you're laying the foundation for your recovery right now. I said, well, I don't know how long I'm going to be in Mississippi. He goes, you may not ever come back here. He said, keep laying your foundation for recovery. I got home. I talked to my parents about needing a car. I'm 26 years old. And they're like, you got to be home at 10 o'clock. I'm like, okay. Yes, ma'am. I'm sleeping on your couch. Yes, ma'am. And I slept on her couch for about 6 weeks, and ended up they had a sign business. We had a family owned sign business, signage. My stepdad was a journeyman sign painter. I mean, he could call what you put the whoop on it. I mean, he was a very talented artist and a very talented sign painter. And my mom was as well. And I started coating out boards for $175 a week. And so here I am making bank in the oil field to going, I'm making $175 a week. And so, ended up meeting a guy named Mike and a guy named Joe. And 6 weeks after sleeping on my mom's couch, we got a little house right around the corner from where she lived in Ridgeland on West Jackson Street, and a little old green house that this lady had birthed her children in. Conventional foundation home, and the house had shifted so much our cat could go in and out the back door without opening the door. There was such a gap there, but rent was $300 a month, and I could afford that. But only $100 out of my pocket with my two roommates. But it was like sober living, kind of what you do today. We kept each other accountable. We called each other on our BS. We read the big book together. We read the NA basic text together. We went to meetings together. We stayed sober together. We stayed clean together. At one time, we held the record for pizza delivery from Pizza Hut at our house in Ridgeland, Mississippi. And so, we had Super Bowl, recovery Super Bowl parties at our house. We had college football game. We hung out. And as you shared about Austin, that's kind of the way Jackson was when I came home. There was a lot of young folks in recovery that wanted to do the same thing I wanted to do. Come home in July, and September was the first time I laid eyes on Joanne. We're going to go to a function in New Orleans, and she's been sober about a month and a half and had tried this thing a few times. She had already had the reputation of being the relapse queen at Yana, and I didn't know that at the time, but I saw her and went, oh my goodness, and we go to New Orleans, and I had probably one of the only things I had left from my active addiction in Texas was my camera. I had a camera, and I love to take pictures too. That tickled me the other night when you shared about that. But when we went to an NA function at Audubon Park in New Orleans, it was a co-ed cabbage softball game. Bring your team. A bunch of drug addicts from all over Southeast. We were all there. It was a blast, We rode the trolleys, but the whole time I'm taking pictures of Joanne. And so we start dating, and so here we go. She's legally separated and still married. I'm like, I've heard that somewhere before. That little flag was going off way back here in the back of my mind, but I'm like, man, I'm really digging this girl, And so at that time, I guess I'm about three months sober. Nobody in the H&I committee at NA would go to Doctor's Hospital that was at St. D, or go to Whitfield to carry a meeting, or go to Jackson Recovery Center at the time before it came Harbor House. So I'm like, I'll do it. Oh, you ain't been clean long enough. You got to have 6 months clean time. I'm like, all right, well, who in the hell in this room is going to do it? I'm like, y'all really going to hold that against me? No, nobody wants to do it, but you're telling me I can't go take a meeting to a facility where they need a meeting, that they need to hear about this message? And I'm like, oh, yeah, go ahead and do it. So I did not know what I was getting into. But for me, that was another layer of my foundation for my long-term recovery. And Joe was doing that with me. And so it's October. The fair's already come to town. We come home from Whitfield. She lived out at Reflection Point in Flowood when it was a brand new apartment complex. And I'm saying, when you getting divorced? Oh, I don't know. So I'm like, all right, this probably isn't going anywhere. But she beat me to the punch, and she jumps out and goes, hey, my sponsor said I couldn't hang out with you anymore. And I'm like, who's your sponsor? She's like, none of your business. I mean, y'all, I'm driving my stepdad's powder blue S10 with a camper on it. I look like a pedophile anyway. And so I don't even have the truck in park. I put the truck in park. She's standing there with the door up. I said, can't we talk about it? She goes, there's nothing really to talk about, Kirk. I'll see you around. And she shut the door. And I went, damn it, boy. And so I knew that's what I needed. But that's not what I wanted. Mm-hmm. My God's got a really cool sense of humor. So I turn on the radio, Z106. The Stones are singing, you don't always get what you want, but you get what you need. And I started laughing out loud and was like, thank you, and boogied on. Now, I will not sit here and say I didn't do a whole lot of other hen and shin like we all do in early recovery, but finally got to the point about, I had a bumper sticker on my stepdad finally gave me a car that he bought for my brother, a little blue Firebird. Only had a little 6-cylinder engine in it, but it was badass looking, you know. And I didn't really feel. My feelings were mad, sad, glad, happy, anger, fear. That all fit in a little crayon box for me. More fear, anger than anything. I was pretty happy-go-lucky guy, though. I did absolutely insist on enjoying life. When I went to making $175 a week, at 9 months in, a guy that had about 5 years in NA, I'm like, dude, I'm ready to do my 4-step. What do I do? He goes, I don't know. I've never done one. And I'm like, appreciate it. See you. And I got a guy who had helped start NA in Mississippi, Charlie R., way back in 1977 is when it started in Mississippi. And Charlie took me through the steps. We were painstaking about going through those, and I did. And took me a minute to do my 5th step, almost a year and a half to do my 4-step. It's so ironic enough that I take that back. About 14 months I was done. The World Convention of Narcotics Anonymous was in New Orleans in 1987. I told Charlie I was done with my 4-step. I was going to find somebody at the convention that didn't speak English, and I was going to do my 5th step with them. I was still kind of hung up on that. Oh, God, hey, God, I know you know all this, but, man, I don't want to tell another person what I've done. And Charlie thought that was comical. You know, this is back in the day when no pagers yet, no cell phones. Everybody had an answer machine. When I left the house, I had at least $1 in my pocket for the payphone, and I always had a cup holder full of them in my car. My books were always in my car because I had all my phone numbers in my NA book and my big book. I had my phone numbers were in there. And I'd always call Charlie first. Usually he worked. He was responsible. So I'd go to the answer machine. I knew I'd talk to him or see him at a meeting later, and I'd call the next person on the list. And a lot of times just taking that action took me out of where I was at that time. Mm-hmm. Or I'd zip by Yana, you know, a lot of people don't know that 4801 originated at 4801 State Street. That's where it came from.
Really?
That was the address for 4801 in a little business complex. We were upstairs in an L-shaped room, and that was an awesome meeting. You know, when you got your 1 year at 4801, you got your own dadgum coffee cup. And you could make the newcomer wash it out for you.
I love that.
And watch them clean the ashtrays after the meeting, too. But, you know, continuing to lay the base for my recovery. Told Charlie I wanted to do my 5th step. He goes, all right, I'll hook you up with a priest. I'm like, no, that ain't happening. I can't even go down that avenue right now. That scares me worse than anything. And I said, I want to do it with you. He goes, well, that's all you had to say. So suited up, showed up with my notebook and got over to his house and grabbed my book, opened it up, and he took it out of my hand. He threw it on the coffee table, and he said, "Tell me your life story from the time you remember feeling. Because that's everything you got written in that book right now." I said, "You're right." So about 5.5, 6 hours later, after a lot of crying, a lot of 2 or 3 cigarette breaks, he said, "Job well done." He said, "If you think of anything," he goes, "and you will, you'll think things are going to pop up continually in your recovery. As long as you stay sober, you're going to remember things that you did that either hurt you or you hurt someone else or something that happened that you're just real indifferent about. And when that does happen, say a prayer, you call me and tell me about it, and then we'll keep moving on." It's time for you to work on those defects of character. Because my defects of character, I always, when I share this in a meeting, you know, like I said a minute ago, you know, I had about 8 feelings, which were all could be character defects at the time. You know, my defects of character at the time that I wanted to identify could fit in a 12-pack crayon box. I got a box today that still has about 164 of them in there. Every primary color, you know, is broken down into a different shade of blue or yellow or green or black or whatever. And mine has that sharpener in it that I can sharpen that crayon. That, you know, I talked to one of my sponsees today when I was out walking, and he told me about losing his marbles at work last night. And I said, "Okay, well, what was your part in that?" "You know, I said, "Trust me, brother, it's going to take a long time for that to go away." I said, "Anger and rage were my best friend for a long, long time, even in my recovery. And I hurt a lot of people. I hurt myself a lot, you know." Joanne and I ended up regrouping. We did what every normal couple does. We got pregnant first. And, you know, I do not say this proudly, but I'd paid for one abortion in early recovery, and I would not do that again. It was on the wishes of the other person, and that hurt. That was something I had to talk about, that I had to write about, that I had to let go of. And she didn't want to do that, and I didn't want to do that. And I said, "You know, will you marry me?" And we got married on April Fool's Day in 1989. couple of little fools. And so that child, we both still stayed really involved. You know, we're real involved. It was like, you know, typical go to meetings together. You know, we never sat together. You know, she had her little group of girls. She helped a lot of women, you know, and I sporadically helped guys, you know, but I was a part of the group. I was a member of the group. I was an active member. I never turned my back on anyone, so to speak. I wasn't sure how to do that yet. I was still trying to get through the steps myself. And so 2 weeks prior to due date, I started my career at COPAC in 1988. It's a funny story. I was a self-employed sign painter.
Hey, Kirk.
Yeah.
Hold on 2 seconds. We might have to do a part 2.
Okay, I'm sorry.
No, I'm like loving every minute of this. I have a meeting at Hartfield at 3, which is why I needed to start at 1 today. And I literally just looked at the clock. We have so much left to talk about, though.
I might be able to encap. Well, I don't know.
No, I want to like give it time. Can we do a part 2?
Yeah.
Would you be willing to do a part 2?
Sure.
Because I want to talk about your dad. I want to talk about you going through that. I want to talk about all that. But I have to show up for Jax.
I understand. Yes, you do.
Yeah. So wait, can we all schedule that?
Yeah, we'll get it done.
Okay,
Yeah.
I'm about to haul booty out of here.
Okay.
This is so good. I want to keep going. Okay, I've got to show up for him.
No worries.
Please schedule it.
I will.
You're the best.
All right. We will see you for. We'll see you next week.
Be safe on the road.
Okay.
Yeah. All
I'm
right.
excited about this.
Awesome.
All right. We'll see you guys.
This is the Recovery Lab.
Here we dive deep into the struggles, victories, and hope that stem from recovery.
No shame, no judgment, just truth, grace, and inspiration.
Let's walk this road together.